So, my name is Kristen Nassif. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Newport Beach. My office is closer to Fashion Island, so I get a lot of people from the beach cities, although I do work in Irvine as well, somewhat. I ran treatment centers for several years, and I've been doing private practice for about four. So, I've been practicing total for around 7 years. Love what I do, and I do a lot of relationship work, attachment work, and boundary work. So I'm ready for any questions on the topic.
All right, cool. So the reason for this discussion on appropriate and inappropriate behavior after a relationship ends comes from seeing the recent discourse between Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, and Pete
Mm-hmm.
Davidson. The first public display of discourse was Kanye's series
Mm-hmm.
of posts on Instagram on Super Bowl Sunday
Mm-hmm.
on how he was upset that Kim didn't join him with the kids for the game. He also called Pete Davidson skeet in a post that said, "For everyone married, hold your spouse close because there is a skeet lurking in every dirty ass
Mm-hmm.
alley waiting to destroy your family." Then weeks later, he released a music video in which he kidnaps and buries Pete Davidson alive. Now, I think it's natural human emotion to feel jealousy
Right.
if a relationship ended, and then voicing that jealousy to a friend or a family member, or even attempt some actions to win the person back. But when does voicing or acting on that jealousy start to become harassment?
Well, uh, it starts when you're making comments. So as soon as you start making comments, it becomes inappropriate. So use that's what a therapist is for, right? If I was Kanye's therapist, that's all those fantasies are actually very healthy to work through. I want to work through those fantasies, those aggressive fantasies, those retaliative fantasies to get them out of his system so that he doesn't do them out in the real world where truly like what is the gain? That is that going to get Kim back? No. I mean in a situation, just obviously just using them as the hypothetical, right? If we if we are aggressive towards our ex partner, whether that's a spouse or a girlfriend boyfriend, then it doesn't really achieve anything except for momentary retaliation, right? So it goes into immediate gratification, and when we just go for immediate gratification, we're really triggering our dopamine reward system, and it can become a little bit addicting. So anger is one of the things that actually like hits our reward system in the same way that other addictive properties do. So when we engage in that and we give ourselves free reign to do that, it just sets up a really bad pattern for us in general too. So again, very healthy to work through those things and work through those fantasies. And I do a lot of fantasy work in my practice. I was trained psychodynamically, which means I work a lot in the subconscious. And in doing that, we get to explore reactions without the bounds of our like normal social constructs and what's like allowed and not allowed, and we can get them out of our system and then move on, right? So that's like the processing that we need in order to move on. Sometimes we got to live out those fantasies, but doing them in person is, I'd say, if you're thinking about doing it, that's when you need to pick up the phone and make an appointment with a therapist, or at least talk it out with a friend. Just keep it between you and someone else.
Yeah. So let's say someone ends a relationship and they have their ex trying to cast them and or their new partner in a negative light with their peers or mutual friends to the point where the form of voicing and action does become something closer to harassment. What is the best response or action for the party on the receiving end of that behavior to have? And I'm sure it's a different answer depending on if a couple has kids or not.
Uh, yeah, well, kids do make it different because if you got kids together, you gotta keep talking to the person. But when it becomes harassment, that's usually when legal becomes involved, honestly. And sometimes there needs to be, especially in divorce proceedings where there are kids present, then it becomes then sometimes like a mediator is the thing that has to start being used, or there isn't any contact between the parents anymore. And there are legal blocks that we put in place. If there's no kids, then and your ex is harassing you, block that person. If you don't want to receive the inappropriate attention from that person, then block them. And if that doesn't work and they start physically harassing you, coming to your home, your workplace, and then again, that's when authorities become involved. That's when legal becomes involved. I'm so sorry. My dog is just wanting to go outside so bad. Okay, go. Be free. Be free. So, yeah. So with harassment, there's never a point to put up with it. Now, before harassment, when we have inappropriate comments or like little things here and there that aren't on the scale of harassment yet, that's when communication comes in and boundary setting and potentially trying to have a conversation with that person about it. But again, that's, you're really engaging with someone who's trying to live out a fantasy of expressing their anger on you. It usually doesn't end well.
Right. So my next question is for when there is a third party in a relationship. Now, on times when I've been the other guy, I've been very clear about staying discreet, drama-free. I discourage any delusions of running away together. However, with Kim and Kanye, they are divorced, and Pete is officially Kim's partner. And a few weeks ago, after Kanye continued to publicly argue on Instagram against Kim's parenting choices and dating Pete, Pete finally broke his silence, and a screenshot posted online showed that Pete texted Kanye, "Yo, it's Skeet," and basically asked Kanye to calm down, to respect the private nature of the divorce, and told Kanye to grow the fuck up. To which Kanye West responded, "Oh, so you're using profanity. Where are you right now?" And then Pete Davidson replied with a shirtless selfie, throwing up the peace sign, tongue out, and said, "In bed with your wife." And then seconds later, he texted him saying, "I'm in Los Angeles for the day if you want to stop being a little internet bitch boy and talk man to man." And then when I read that, I thought, damn, Skeet, go off, King. But my question is that an appropriate response from someone who is a third party in a relationship? Or is that kind of response something that might make matters worse? Like maybe escalate to Kanye walking up on stage when Pete's doing comedy in order to slap him.
Yeah, so the other thing we have to consider here is outlying mental health issues, right? So whenever we're dealing with, and I won't comment specifically on anything with Kanye because he's not my client and I don't know him personally. But in general, when we have other outlying mental health issues that could be at play, it is never a good idea to antagonize someone who could be prone to volatility or could be prone to major emotional shifts. So that's one thing, right? So use your wisdom. Don't poke the bear. Secondly, as on Pete Davidson's side, that shows an incredible amount of immaturity, right? So in order for someone to rise to the level, or I guess stoop to the level that Kanye was engaging in through his anger, I mean, again, it's not solving anything. So what Pete Davidson did was actually put Kim at risk, right? And Kim's children at risk. If Kanye wasn't Kanye, right, and he was somebody else, and he was someone that struggled with other mental health issues, maybe had a history, maybe really was aggressive, wasn't just saying these things, that person could come in and that those children could be at risk for witnessing violence, kidnapped. I mean, there's a ton of things that could happen as a result of like instigating to that level, which are totally inappropriate. So the best thing for Pete Davidson to do in that scenario would be to not engage, right? To check on Kim. What about Kim? This is not about him. This is about Kim. This is her ex. Is she okay? How does she feel about this? What can I do to support you? And that's the response that we need from a partner in that scenario. There is no constructive conversation when we're working out of retaliation and revenge because it's just irrational, right? We're just going off gut feelings, impulses, impulse, immediate gratification. So to try to engage in some sort of back and forth where you're standing up for yourself is really just ego speaking, and it doesn't get anyone anywhere. Like that didn't help that didn't help the situation at all. And I'm sure Kim wasn't very happy about that.
No, she definitely wasn't. Well, Kristen Nassif, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You know what? If you ever want to schedule a session and figure out why you're always the other guy, I'm happy to help.
Thanks. No, I'm a very happy boy.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. So yeah. Anyways, maybe you're someone past the point of addressing a spouse's behavior and you're already married, you have children, and you're thinking about getting a divorce, but you want to know what legal boundaries and precedents are in place for when your ex spouse is someone who is difficult to deal with. And for that, we have another guest coming in, one with legal expertise joining us. So, welcome and please introduce yourself and your work.
Yes, my name is Alexa Gudis, and I'm a family law attorney at Duchess Wittenberg Canningsberger LLP. We have an office in Chicago, Illinois, and we just recently opened an office in California as well. I'm going to limit my answers to the questions you're going to ask me based on my experience, and I practice exclusively in Illinois. But we do have an office that we just opened in California.
Cool. So, Kanye has been mostly silent online recently, but a few weeks ago he decided to go on Instagram and share his thoughts publicly regarding his and Kim's relationship with each other and their kids. The issues he expressed disagreement with were the fact that his kids weren't allowed to attend his Sunday service event, what school they go to, and what they post on TikTok. And to me, all of that sounds like Kanye and Kim aren't on the same page when it comes to legal custody and physical custody. So, can you explain to our viewers what the difference between those two forms of custody are?
So in Illinois, we've done away with the term custody, which I think is a good thing, and instead we've adopted the term allocation of parental responsibilities, and that could relate to decision making or to parenting time. With respect to decision making, there's four areas of significant decision making. Those areas are education, medical, extracurricular activities, and religion. So the court will assign allocation of parental responsibilities over those four areas to either both of the parents together or to one of the parents. So parties could have shared decision making, which means they make the decisions together. If a party has shared decision making, they will do their best to reach an agreement themselves. And if they can't reach an agreement on one of those areas, they will then go to mediation. And if they can't agree after they mediate, then they will have to bring the dispute to court, and the court will have to make a decision. Um, the court can also award sole decision making in any of those areas to just one of the parents. If one parent has sole decision making, that doesn't mean that that parent could just exclude the other parent from decisions entirely. What it means is that that parent would have ultimate decision making. They would still have the obligation of consulting with the other parent over whatever decision it is. But in the event they can't reach an agreement, the parent that has ultimate decision making or sole decision making would get to proceed with making that decision on their own after they've consulted with the other parent. With respect to parenting time in Illinois, the standard is the best interest of the child. So the judge will often, first, what happens in Illinois is if there's children involved, the parties will attend mediation to see if they can reach an agreement on parenting schedules. And if they can't, what usually happens is the court will appoint an attorney to represent the child, a guardian ad litem or a child representative. That person will get involved in the case, and their obligation is to the child. They don't represent mom, they don't represent dad. They're a neutral party who just advocates for the children. And that person will get into the case, will do an investigation that could include talking to mom, talking to dad, depending on the ages of the children. It could include talking to the children. Then that person will give a recommendation to the court. And in Illinois, that person's opinion carries a lot of weight in the courtroom.
So many people in the comment section of Kanye's Instagram perceived or interpreted Kanye's posts and videos like he was making it sound like Kim was denying him access to his kids, which resulted in her finally calling him out in a comment in which she said, "Please stop with this narrative. You were just here this morning picking up the kids for school." So my takeaway is that Kanye wants to see his kids more than what was agreed to in the divorce. And I imagine a divorce where the parents still get along, it might not be much of an issue when one parent wants to see the kids unscheduled. But in other divorces where boundaries are set and there is some discord, what's the best step for a parent to take when the other parent doesn't want to respect those boundaries?
So usually in a case where there are children involved, there will be a parenting judgment that's entered, and that parenting judgment will include decision making and which parent has the decision making, whether it's joint, whether it's sole, and then it also set forth a parenting schedule, including a regular schedule, a holiday schedule, a summer schedule, and I will tell many clients this is a piece of paper. This is what the agreement is. You can put it in a drawer, never look at it again if you and your co-parent have a good relationship, and you can deviate from this if that's what you want to do. And this is a fallback. So if you want to change what the schedule is in your judgment and you both agree to do that, you can certainly do that. But then in the event there's a dispute, you have to pull your judgment back out and you should follow your judgment. So yes, it's the case that if you get along with your co-parent, you can deviate from what your allocation judgment says or your parenting agreement says, but it's just a guideline to follow, and then you have that as a backup in the event you guys have a dispute over something. With Kim and Kanye's circumstances, it seems like they right now don't have that type of relationship, and if I had clients that weren't co-parenting well, I would advise them to communicate only in writing about their kids. And I would advise people who don't have a good co-parenting relationship to follow their allocation judgment or whatever their parenting agreement is.
Now, one of the last videos that Kanye posted was a recording of himself that ended with him praying publicly that his kids would be able to show up to his Sunday service concert. For viewers that haven't seen it, let's take a look. So, I grew up in a Christian home. Two of my uncles are pastors. Another two uncles think they are pastors. And I still have my faith and my own beliefs. But unfortunately, I have seen people try to use faith in order to guilt or manipulate others. And in this case, when he prayed that the nannies would be touched by God and bring his kids to Sunday service, I interpreted that action as performative, because to me it sounded like he was hoping to appeal to their audience or manipulate the nannies in hopes that under a misguided act of faith, they would subvert Kim's parental decision on not going to Sunday service and basically kidnap the kids for him to have for those few hours. So my question is, have you seen divorces where one spouse tries to use the other spouse's faith to coerce them into not setting boundaries or go through with a divorce? And what's your advice in those circumstances?
Yes. Some people might feel guilty. They took a vow before God, and that person might feel as though they could be manipulated into staying married or feel some guilt for wanting to divide their family. Personally, I have seen some clients of different cultures who it's frowned upon in their culture to get a divorce, whether it's their spouse who doesn't want the divorce or their parents who are telling them, pressuring them to stay married because it's against their culture. I have seen that, yes. But, they can get a divorce if they want to. So if they are feeling manipulated or guilty, that's a personal choice whether or not they want to proceed with their divorce. But if somebody came to me and said that they're not sure if they should get a divorce, I would always recommend marriage counseling or individual counseling to explore what that person really wants to do. But if that person has made the choice that they want to be divorced, despite pressure from their spouse that they're trying to divorce, or their family members or their children, I would advise them to proceed with the divorce if that's what they wanted to do. And if the other party is an unwilling participant, there are means to get the divorce anyway. For example, a default judgment. If, in Illinois, we have rules within a certain amount of time after being served with a petition for dissolution of marriage, the other party has to file an appearance and has to file a response, have to appear in court or have an attorney appear in court on their behalf. And if that person just refuses to do those things, my client wouldn't be stuck just married. I would be able to obtain a default judgment on behalf of my client and say to the judge that the other party has been notified of the divorce, the other party has notice, has been served, but is just refusing to participate because they don't want the divorce. And my client would be granted a default judgment and would be divorced. So there are ways to move forward if a person is getting pressured.
Okay, Alexa Gudos, family law attorney at DWK LLP. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, we've reached the end of today's episode, and the biggest takeaway is that if you or someone you know has ended a relationship and is having an antagonistic ex-partner, or you or the person you know is possibly being the antagonizer, there are steps you can take to avoid more conflict.